This episode deals with allegations of sexual assault and includes anatomical references. Viewer discretion is advised.
Broadcasting from New York City to the world, it's the G-Man Interviews.
Welcome. The following is an excerpt from an article that was published in the Texas Observer on October 9, 2013. One morning in late 1986, Beverly Troupe approached her mother and said she felt a burning sensation when she urinated. This wasn't the first time. LaVern Troupe had taken her 8-year-old daughter to the hospital with similar symptoms twice before, once in Germany, where they had lived earlier that year, and in Killeen, where they were now stationed. LaVern's husband, Brian, served in the military as a telecommunications officer, and the family moved with him from base to base. LaVern and Brian had married 5 years earlier, when Beverly was 3, and had 2 boys and a girl together. Though he wasn't her biological father, Brian considered Beverly his daughter. He was running drills that morning at Fort Hood, and LaVern was alone with the children when Beverly started complaining of pain. LaVern took her daughter to the Darnell Army Community Hospital at the base. A doctor examined Beverly, found nothing wrong, and sent them home. But the pain didn't go away. Beverly complained again that night, so her mother waited for Brian to get home and they returned to the hospital. They were young parents, in their mid-20s, and the pediatrician who examined Beverly, Dr. Samuel Mujica, was 29. When he conducted a pelvic exam, Mujica noticed something unusual. Beverly, he scribbled in his notes, was missing her hymen. There were several small cuts around her vaginal area. She was very reserved, the doctor noted. She wouldn't laugh, and she wouldn't make eye contact. He came to suspect that she had been sexually abused. As a result of the doctor's testimony and that of social worker Helen Paramore, Brian Troupe was convicted of sexual assault and spent nearly 20 years in prison after his stepdaughter said he molested her. However, he remained in prison long after she recanted her story. Moreover, after spending a number of years investigating the case, she believes Paramore manipulated her into making the confession and that critical mistakes were made in the case that led to her father's conviction. On June 27th of this year, I spoke with Beverly Troupe-Enoch, her husband Will, and Brian and LaVern Troupe about the case and what they hope to achieve going forward. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to the show. Ms. Troupe-Enoch, I'll begin with you. You've submitted a number of documents relating to your case, and it would be impossible for me to cover everything in detail in the amount of time that we have. Could you provide an overview of the case and the names of those directly involved?
I was admitted into a Darnell Army Hospital pediatrician, pediatrics, and I was admitted there December 11th. The pediatrician at the time wanted to admit me, and I guess, I don't know what information he was given or whatever he saw, allegedly a cut. He took that information and told everyone that I had been sexually abused off of that cut. And he told another doctor who was an OBGYN at the time in the hospital who had no knowledge of the case or what was going on at the time that I had been sexually abused because he wanted him to further, do a public examination the next day. And that was held on December 12th. And when he did the public examination, he nowhere stated in the medical records that I had been sexually abused. He just kind of indicated what he saw, which was not much. And the original pediatrician contacted the CPS worker as well as some other law people, I guess the Killeen Police Department, and told everybody that I had been sexually abused And that was the day that I was admitted to the hospital, which was on December 11th. But December 12th was the actual day that I had the more thorough pelvic examination.
I'm her mother. I was there when Beverly was 8, that year of 86. She turned 9, 87. She was complaining of burning when she urinated. I got her an appointment at the office on Fort Hood because my husband was in the military at that time. I carried her to the doctor, and Dr. Mujica examined Beverly while I waited outside. He came back. He did a urine sample, and he did all of this. And to get a urine sample, you must go into the urethra where all of this was. And when he did this urine sample, he came back. When everything was tested, he said, Beverly is fine, no complaints, no problems, and no infections. And I said, okay. So he gave me a note to take her back to school. This was December 10th. I carried Beverly back to school, and I was talking to her about Christmas, everything just to see where she was in her mind with all of this. My husband was in the field, and we only had that one car, so I carried him early that morning, and I took her to the doctor. When she got out of school, there was a tree swing across the street that her and her younger brother loved to play on. Beverly liked to wear dresses and everything. There was a string, and it was made out of coarse straw, and it had a big knot tied at the end of it where the kids would swing on it. But some of the times they would have a little Hot Wheels tire on there. The children loved it, and they would race to get on it. Even the little girl that lived there, they loved that swing. Beverly would get on that swing, and she would swing, and she would play with it. I didn't think anything of it. And when she came home later on at night, she stated, and her father was still on forehead, she still complained of burning. So let me just check her out myself. I carried Beverly to the bathroom, and I looked. She had a little tiny skin tear next to her labia, majora, the outer area of her vagina. When I saw that, and when she would urinate, it was moist. It would get wet, and quite naturally, a skin tear will burn. I'm still not thinking anything, so I waited for my husband to come home. I said, Beverly is still complaining of burning. We took her back to the hospital, and there was this, we was in an emergency room, and there was a Dr. Miller or Joseph, I can't remember his name. He examined Beverly when they called us back. His bedside manner was very demeaning and very opposing to me, and he already had an attitude towards me in the room. He didn't use any layman terms with me on her diagnosis. Please forgive my tone, but I'm just giving you quotations of what she said. When I asked this nurse, what is this doctor talking about, because he was not speaking to me, she said, oh, just like a hooker, her cherry has been busted. And that's when I thought, this is ridiculous. I ran out into the emergency room when my husband was in, and he was asleep because he has sleep apnea. And I told him something is not right. You're accusing us of something or whatever. They're accusing us of foreplay. I remember that word. And my husband jumped up and said he's not a freaking maniac, but he didn't say freaking. We went on, and they had called Helen Paramore, but at first it was a lady by the name of Jean. She was the social worker. She gave the case over to Helen Paramore, which Helen Paramore was not experienced. So therefore, Helen did whatever they told her to do, and they took it from there, and my daughter hadn't ever come back home to us till she turned 18. But prior to that, I had seen Dr. Mujica again, and Dr. Mujica told me, I give you my word, he told me that he has to do this to make himself look like he's a good doctor. He said there's one good thing out of this. Beverly never had a penis inside. He said because on the inside was not vibrated or rubbed. But the social workers after Helen Paramore was telling me that Beverly was cut up like raw hamburger meat.
In the information that your family submitted to me, you mentioned something about a videotape.
When the court hearings was going on, I was not allowed in the courtroom. So I was standing out in the vestibule with everyone else. And the social worker attorney and all of the prosecuting attorneys, except for our attorney, they were standing there talking. And I heard the word videotape. And I walked over there to them, and I asked them to see that videotape. And they acknowledged the videotape when they said, no, you can't see it. You can't see it. When they told me I couldn't see the tape, that let me know there was a tape. I kept complaining. I kept writing them, and I kept bugging them about that tape. Finally, they told me I could come see the tape, but I could not bring anyone with me but my pastor. And my pastor, during those times in the 80s, wasn't going to have anything to do with it. It was very trying and frightening for everyone, even for my family. I went to see that videotape. I understood how Helen Paramore was questioning Beverly, which is very unacceptable to this day, and at that time, because they've done lots of studies on that. She just kept hammering Beverly to say these things. So Beverly said, I'm hungry. Can I get something to eat? And she said, not until you answer my question. To me, that's abuse, because you're depriving a child of food. So she kept asking Beverly these questions. So Beverly kept looking at her toxicity and not wanting to answer. So Beverly said, can I have some water? Okay, fine. She let Beverly get some water, turned off the tape. Beverly got some water and came back. And Beverly still sniffing, pulling on her socks. I know her language. So when that happened, Helen Paramore said, what are you afraid of, Beverly? What are you afraid of? Are you afraid of your dad? Is that what you're afraid of? You're afraid your dad is going to do this and all these things to you? Is that what it is? And Beverly said, no, I don't let nobody touch me down there. And I had at least 2 more times to see it, but no one could come with me. They would not give me a copy of it. I have letters asking for it. I have the letters of them stating why I wanted the tape. They always knew what I wanted, but we was never able to say anything. They told me I had nothing to do with the case. I'm her mother, and I only wanted my 3 children by my husband, not Beverly.
And this is the same videotape that officials are claiming is missing.
Exactly. This is the same videotape that's missing. And it's not missing because they put it in a letter stating where it was and how they found it.
Rusty Carroll, the prosecutor, stated in his 1995 affidavit that he stated where the tape would be if anybody wanted it for future use, for any future use. He stated that would be in the Bell County District Office, DA's office. And when I had written them about a year or 2 ago, I have 2 letters today that state that they've looked and looked for it and that they no longer have the tape. It no longer exists.
And that's so far as it's affecting my husband. He was in the military. He could not have gone in the military with diabetes, high blood pressure, heart problems, and all of this, which he has obtained now. When he got out, when they put him in prison, all of these sicknesses came about, and it's all because of stress and all of this that they put him on, not knowing if he'll be alive one minute or dead the next. Because one inmate, when he was in Palestine, found out what was going on, he asked to be removed, and they brought him to another whole new prison.
Mr. Troupe.
Yes.
When and how did military officials or law enforcement approach you to discuss the alleged incident?
I was on a field exercise. I came home for a shower run, and my wife had told me that she had took her to the hospital that morning, and she was complaining about burning down in her vagina area. So me and my wife went and took her back to the emergency room, and that's when they had said that she had been molested and had told us that they were going to keep her, admit her to the hospital. And that next day, I was confronted by the pediatrician, which said that my daughter said I had molested her. They later notified my company commander, so I was confined to the barracks. They wouldn't let me go back home. Their investigation came to the conclusion that I was the one that molested her and brought charges on me.
Did you ever get the sense that the officials doubted what you told them?
Yes, my commander actually, because he knew I was on a field exercise, but they had went so far as to say that I was molesting her when we were stationed in Germany, and I don't even know where those allegations come from.
The statements that you provided also indicated that there were some discrepancies between the information or the comments that were provided by Dr. Samuel Mujica Trenche and Helen Paramore, the social worker in question? Or what happened in that situation?
My name is Will Enoch. I know of some inconsistencies of what he said in court. Could I state a few of them?
You have the floor, sir.
Dr. Samuel Mujica at the court trial in 1987 was shown some photographs, and the photographs were taken by the police officer that investigated the case. She got there, and even the document stated in her report, she said she got there late. So she was only able to take external photos of Beverly's private areas. But when Mujica had the opportunity in court, when he was asked by the prosecutor, describe what you see in these photos, he described internal things, like things that would be not in the picture. But that was his opportunity to correct the prosecutor. But what he did to strengthen his case, he went on and didn't correct the prosecutor. He went on to describe internal things based on external photos, and I thought that was kind of odd. And this was another thing that the doctor did. He reported the day after, so it was the 12th. So on the 11th, on the 10th, Beverly was admitted. So on the 11th, he reported to DHS, which is CPS now. He reported to them that Beverly had definitely been sexually assaulted. He reported that. It was reported then to the police department. He went on to talk about all kind of injuries, and he also included anal injuries. And he also said that Beverly would have a more thorough exam the next day. I thought it was odd that he would already come up with a diagnosis of sexual assault one day and then tell the officer or put into report that the officer took down finally that a more thorough exam would be done on the 12th, which would be the next day. So, and the officer didn't even catch that. I mean, he's already saying she's definitely sexually abused, but yet a more thorough exam would be carried on the next day. And also, Dr. Mujica, when he described those so-called injuries, he mentioned something about injuries to the anus. Now, the actual OBGYN that did the exam on the 12th, the more thorough exam he was talking about, told Mujica, and it's in the report, medical reports, that state of the anus, the relaxed state, was due to the sedation that Beverly was under during the procedure that they used on her. Then when Mujica had a chance to correct that, when he finally filed his police report himself, when the police took a statement from him at the end of the month, at the end of December of 1986, he had an opportunity to correct that about the anus, and he didn't. He left it in there. So I thought that was all inconsistent on his part. Instead of being consistent with truth, he was more trying to, it looks like he was trying to keep his diagnosis, his premature diagnosis intact. I read the actual court transcripts, and none of that was brought up. None of those inconsistencies.
Was DNA evidence, such as hair follicles or semen, ever submitted in the case, or was the conviction solely based on the assessment made by Dr. Mujica Trenche and Helen Paramore?
There were no physical findings in this case. It was only mentioned by word of Mujica and Paramore.
When were you sentenced, Mr. Troupe?
I was sentenced in 1987.
And how many years were you imprisoned?
18 years and 9 months.
Ms. Troupe-Enoch, have you met or spoken with Dr. Mujica Trenche or Helen Paramore over the last 25 years?
I spoke with Dr. Mujica back in, what year was that? I believe it was 2009. I called him up one day, and because I think this was right around the time we were looking at filing another writ and about to go to court. And but I called him one day, and I refreshed his memory of who I was and gave him a little more insight about the case and time frame and everything. And he automatically remembered me fairly quickly. It was not that long of a conversation, maybe about 10 to 15 minutes, but he automatically knew who I was. And I started asking him some questions, and he sounded apologetic, in which later on he did apologize, and he told me that he would be more than willing to help the family in any way that he could. And that's what he was there for. And as far as Paramore, I was only able to very briefly say hello to her when we went to the hearing back in 2011.
Now, for clarity, when Dr. Samuel Mujica Trenche apologized, what was he apologizing for?
Well, it appeared to me as though he was apologizing for what my family and I had gone through and apologized for the fact that my father had been in prison. I also would like to mention when this began, I was in the hospital, and it was like around 5:30 in the evening time when she began the interrogation. And she first handed me a doll, which I very vividly remember because I really wanted the doll. And she told me to play with the doll and that it could be all mine if I were to talk with her.
And again, you were 8 years old at the time.
I was 8 years old at the time, yes. And she started talking to me and asking me questions I didn't understand. She mentioned the word, excuse my, bluntness, penis on several occasions. At an 8-year-old, I never heard that word before, and I didn't know what it meant. And she kept asking me if my father had touched me and everything like that. I didn't know what she was talking about at that, moment. I'm thinking, as an 8-year-old, touch me? Yeah, we hug all the time. And so she went further into some questioning that, as an 8-year-old, I don't think any 8-year-old would understand. But I noticed every time she would ask me if I was taunted or sexually touched by my dad, I said no on several occasions, and she would get madder and madder. And so finally, at that time in the conversation, she snatched the doll away from me and told me I was not going to have or play with her doll anymore. And so that's when I at that second, gave in and told her, okay, fine, yes, I was. And so she handed me the doll back, and she continued on her questioning. And I think that's how all this began. I knew that I didn't want to make her upset. I knew I wanted the doll, and I knew that at many times I was threatened that I wouldn't go home to my mommy and daddy. I knew I wanted to go home to my mommy and daddy. So at that time of questioning, I started answering all of her questions that she wanted me, giving her answers that she wanted to hear, just to, so I can go home again. So that's how all of this began in that hospital room in that interrogation that night. But then she admitted in the 2011 hearing that she had no doll, that she handed me no doll. She was asked that question very bluntly by Janice Baldwin, and she told her that no, she did not have a doll. But later on, she stated that she did have a doll. She stated that maybe like 2-3 pages later, that, as Janice was asking her questions, she kind of just blurted that she did have a doll. So she's saying two different things. She didn't have a doll, and then she's saying that she did have a doll that she gave to me.
Nearly 30 years have passed. Dr. Mujica Trenche appears to have a thriving practice in Las Vegas, and the court system in Texas hasn't complied with your request to have the case reopened in order to exonerate your stepfather. To those listening and saying, why doesn't she just let it go? How would you respond?
I would never let something like this go because it's not the truth, and I stand by the truth, and I want it out.
To let it go would allow them to continue to do someone else the same way they did me, and there's a lot of injustice going on as it is out there today. So for me to just say, let it go, and then I'm on parole for the next 30 years as well. For me to say, just let it go, that's not doing me any justice.
For 18 years, you sat in a jail cell proclaiming your innocence. And during that time, as you said, the fact that people knew why you were in there was literally a threat to your life. How did you manage to deal with that on a daily basis for as long as you did?
Actually, it was by the grace of God, holding on to Jesus and letting God comfort me through this, because the first couple of years I was very angry and didn't want to hear anything. But until I started embracing Jesus in my life, that's the only way I got through the whole ordeal of prison. I had threats on my life because, that's one of the hardest crimes to even go into prison behind. But holding on to Jesus and asking him to keep me through all that is what got me through it.
And with regard to your case, what would you like to see happen now, sir?
Well, actually, I would like to see that they would go back and look at the case and realize they made a mistake and exonerate me and tighten up the rules of how they investigate these cases. Because any child can make an allegation, or any person can make an allegation against a person, and these children are being coerced to say what they want them to say in order for them to go forth. They questioned my daughter for 3.5 hours before she said my daddy had did this. Now, if you question anybody 3.5 hours, even most adults, you're liable to give in and say what you want them to say. So I think they need to look back and check out how they do their investigation and how they question these children.
Let me tell you this way. I met Beverly in 2001, and she never told me about this case. It was something she kept from me. For her reason, she kept it from me. I started really finding out about it when that 2011 hearing was going to come about. And that as the hearing was getting closer, she told me a little bit more about the case, a little bit more. And the more she told me, let me tell you honest, and Pops, nothing against you, but I didn't know that Pops was innocent or guilty, regardless if he was my father-in-law or not. I didn't come to my decision that he was innocent until I read all the documents and how they handled this case, from the medical reports to the actual courtroom transcripts, and listening to Mujica. From what I told you earlier, what he did, he had an opportunity to correct and make right, and he didn't. He was billed up as an expert. He only had 2 years of experience based on what we was able to put together about his career. But at the time, you got to keep in mind, he was, I guess, considered an expert. But in today's standards, the way they determine child sexual assault is through DNA, pregnancy, a venereal disease, or if the child said it happened. Now, those are the things they go on today. They don't go on injuries, how a hymen looks. Those are the things they went on back then, in addition to Beverly's saying that it happened. As far as anything that I would like to see happen in this, I would like to see Samuel Mujica Trenche just come out and say, yeah, back in the day, that's the way we thought. But, yes, I have to agree with what the current medical research say now about how you determine child sexual assault. I don't know if we'll get him to say that because he sounds like a prideful person just reading all of his testimonies. It just sounds like he's a prideful person. And I just would like to see this overturned. I mean, if a person was to sit down and read the transcripts, I have them, Beverly have them, anybody want them, we'll be happy to email them to them and let you decide for yourself. I want the world to decide, not just based on what we're saying, but actually do like I did, read those transcripts and see what decision the person can come to in that.
I'll let you have the final word, Ms. Troupe-Enoch.
Well, altogether, as an 8-year-old innocent child, I was failed by a lot of adults, and then excluding my own parents. I mean, they had nothing to do with this because what they did they thought was right. But I was failed by every adult possible on the state side. What I thought it was, and I looked into them looking at their wallets as well as looking at their pride and to see what they can get out of it as far as winning a case. And I went through great lengths of hell of foster homes. I can say 10 years of foster homes. I've been in 10 different placements, one placement per year that I had to endure in my lifetime. And the fact that I was not able to talk to and see my parents every day, growing into a woman, I'm not able to talk to my mother, tell her things, what was going on, not able to feel and touch my dad as far as every daughter would like to. I had to miss out on that growing up. And I had a lot of anger because of what they did. And I thought about some negative, things, but I've all come past that now. And like my dad said, I just pray about it to my Heavenly Father every day. I pray for justice. And this is something that I cannot sleep on. It's hard. It's very difficult to continue with, but I haven't given up yet. So it must be something there because I'm not going to the day that I die if we still don't see justice. I'm looking for that now, and I'm going to continue it. And mainly just to get this word out what these people did, because there are a lot of inconsistencies which I can't see that the Texas Criminal Court of Appeal judges don't see, and how they were lied to, which my husband and I caught the lies of Mujica and Paramore, which I can't understand why the judges couldn't see that. But I just want the justice, and I want, like my dad, to be free, and I want my parents to be able to just go anywhere in the world that they want to and not have my dad looked at downward upon because they think that he did such a crime, and it never happened.
I thank you all very much for being here and taking the time to share your story.
Thank you.
For the record, several attempts were made to contact Dr. Samuel Mujica Trenche at his Las Vegas office to include him in this discussion. The doctor did not respond to any of the voice messages requesting his participation. Efforts to contact and locate Helen Paramore were also unsuccessful. And finally, on December 22nd of 2006, Beverly Troupe underwent a polygraph examination, which was administered by Texas Polygraph Consultants. The G-Man Interviews has reviewed the document and the examiner's final ruling. It states, upon evaluation of this subject's polygraph charts, it is this examiner's professional opinion that Beverly Troupe was truthful to the above relevant questions. During the post-interview phase of this examination, Beverly Troupe was informed of the results of the examination. No further admissions were made. At this time, the examination was terminated and the subject released. Sincerely, Texas Polygraph Consultants, Ron Hager, Examiner, State of Texas, License Number 762. I'm the G-Man, and until next time, stay cool, stay safe, and stay informed.